Lena, a 30-year-old artist with cropped auburn hair and paint-streaked clothes, had built a quiet life in her city apartment. Her days were a blur of brush strokes and color palettes, but her nights often felt empty, shadows filling the corners of her cozy but lonely space. There was a yearning for something real, something that brought her out of her head and into the warmth of another's embrace. One evening, as the rain drummed heavily against the pavement, Lena was on her way home. Her jacket was pulled close, her steps quickening in the downpour, until she noticed someone under a nearby awning. A man, seemingly in his late 50s, with silver-gray hair and a worn expression, stood there, rain dripping from his hair as he tried to find shelter from the storm. Her heart softened as she looked at him, a vulnerability in his eyes that struck a chord within her. "Hey, you okay?" Lena asked, stepping closer. The man looked up, surprise in his weary gaze. "Just waiting out the rain," he replied, his voice rough, as if unused to conversation. Though he wore a polite smile, he couldn't mask the shivers that ran through him. "You'll get sick waiting here. Come with me," she offered, gesturing toward her apartment just across the street. His hesitation was evident. He seemed unsure if he could trust the warmth in her invitation. She extended her hand gently. "My name's Lena," she said, her voice kind, reassuring. After a brief pause, he reached out, taking her hand. "Ben," he replied simply, his voice quiet. Once inside, Lena handed him a towel, her movements instinctive, and pointed him toward the bathroom. "Take a warm shower and dry off. I'll make something hot for us to drink," she offered with a smile that somehow soothed his guarded look. As he disappeared into the bathroom, Lena's curiosity began to stir. She found herself wondering who he was. What had led him to this rainy evening standing alone under an awning? As she prepared tea, she couldn't help but think there was something different about him, something that seemed to stir her in a way she hadn't expected. 15 minutes later, Ben emerged from the bathroom. He looked changed. A simple shower had softened the roughness around his edges, giving him an air of gentle dignity. Lena felt her heart skip a beat as she looked at him, her gaze lingering a little too long. He noticed her stare and chuckled, a hint of warmth in his expression. "I must look different without the rain." A smile curved her lips, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Yes, you clean up well," she replied, feeling a sudden rush of nerves as she handed him a warm mug. They sat at her kitchen table, the small space made cozier by the warm light and the soft, rhythmic patter of rain against the window. As they sipped their tea, conversation came easily, Ben slowly opening up about the journey that had led him to that night. He told her of the hardships he'd faced, the resilience he found within himself, and the dreams he still harbored. Lena listened, captivated, as if each word held a secret she had longed to uncover. As he spoke, she found herself reaching out, her hand resting on his forearm. His gaze softened, a glimmer of something deeper in his eyes as he looked down at their joined hands. He covered her hand with his, a silent expression of gratitude that sent a spark through her. They fell silent, their eyes meeting in a charged moment. It was a wordless connection, a feeling that wrapped around them like an invisible thread, pulling them closer. She felt her pulse quicken, her breath coming a little faster. Ben shifted, his hand still over hers as he leaned closer, their faces just inches apart. "I don't know why, but I feel drawn to you," he murmured, his voice low, full of a vulnerability that only made her heart race harder. Lena's gaze drifted over his face, taking in every line, every detail. "I feel it too," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The intensity between them grew, the air thickening as they continued to talk, revealing fragments of themselves. Lena felt her usual guardedness slipping away, her walls crumbling as the minutes ticked by. She couldn't resist the way her body leaned toward him, her hands still in his, their fingers entwining naturally. There was an intimacy in their closeness, an unspoken promise in the way he looked at her. As the night deepened, their conversations softened into quiet laughter, the kind of shared secrets and unburdening that only strangers could know. Ben's hand drifted up her arm, his touch light, but enough to send a thrill through her. She felt the warmth of his palm against her skin, the sensation awakening something she had buried long ago, a need for closeness, for the kind of connection that went beyond mere words. With a gentle smile, Lena leaned forward, brushing her fingertips along his jaw. "I didn't think I'd feel this way with someone I just met," she murmured, her voice trembling slightly with the weight of her admission. Ben's gaze grew intense, his eyes meeting hers with a look that left her breathless. "Me neither," he replied, his hand reaching to cup her cheek. In that moment, neither of them thought of the reasons they shouldn't or the circumstances that made this encounter improbable. They only felt the pull, a longing that couldn't be ignored. Slowly, he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a tender, exploratory kiss that deepened as they lost themselves in each other. Her hands found their way around his neck, pulling him closer as their bodies pressed together, each touch igniting sparks that made the world outside fade away. Time became a blur as they moved to her living room, the glow of the lamp casting shadows that flickered around them. They explored each other's warmth, their laughter intermingling with whispered words and soft, intimate glances. Lena felt herself melting under his touch, her heart opening in a way that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Ben's fingers traced patterns along her back, his touch tender yet hungry, as though he were memorizing the feel of her. They spent the night like that, caught in each other's embrace, discovering a closeness that transcended the need for explanation. By the time the first light crept into the room, they lay together, their breaths synchronizing as they drifted into a comfortable silence. Lena's head rested on Ben's chest, her fingers tracing gentle circles along his shoulder. She closed her eyes, feeling a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in years. She knew their connection was brief, fleeting perhaps, but it was real, a moment carved out of time, a gift of warmth and understanding that neither of them could have foreseen. As dawn began to break, Ben stirred, his hand finding hers once more. "Thank you, Lena," he whispered, his voice filled with quiet emotion. "For everything." She looked up at him, her heart aching with a strange mix of joy and sorrow. "You're always welcome here," she replied softly, her fingers brushing against his cheek one last time. They parted that morning with a lingering kiss and an embrace that spoke of promises they knew they couldn't keep. Yet, as he stepped out into the cool morning air, Lena felt a profound sense of gratitude for their connection. She knew that, no matter what lay ahead, she would carry the memory of this night with her, a reminder that even the briefest encounters could touch the soul in lasting, meaningful ways. For Lena, it was a night that filled her heart with warmth and left her with a renewed hope for the future. And for Ben, it was a glimmer of light on a path that had often felt dark and uncertain. In that fleeting moment, they had found something rare and beautiful, a connection that would linger in their hearts long after the morning sun had risen. So what's the lesson here? Sometimes all it takes is a small act of kindness to change someone's life. Or our own Emma could have walked past James that night, and he might have continued to feel alone in his struggles, but by reaching out she not only helped him, but found something she needed, as well a reminder that we're all connected, and we all need each other. Sometimes if there's something to take away from this story, it's this: never underestimate the power of reaching out even in small ways. A little kindness, a warm gesture, or simply listening to someone's story can bridge the gaps in our lives and create moments of genuine connection. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who could use a reminder that kindness still matters. Until next time, remember, small actions can make a big impact. Stay connected, stay kind, and keep looking out for those opportunities to make a difference.